The alarm screamed across the metal halls. Red lights flashed again and again, painting the walls in blood-like color. Somewhere deep inside the station, heavy boots hit the ground like drums of war. The hunters were coming. She ran. The alien girl's small steps echoed against the steel floor. Her breath came sharp and broken. Her wounded arm pressed close to her body. Green blood dripped from her fingers, leaving a trail behind her. Every corner she turned, every shadow she passed felt like the last place she would ever see. The soldiers shouted behind her. "Catch her alive!" She stumbled but did not fall. Her thin legs carried her forward. The pain was great, but greater still was her will to escape. For too long she had lived as a tool, as a thing to be tested, hurt, and broken. Tonight she wanted freedom, or death on her own terms. But the corridors twisted like a maze. Each door led to another locked chamber. Each passage only echoed with more noise of the hunt. Her heart raced. Her wound burned. And then she saw it. At the far end of the corridor, a tall human figure, dressed in a worker's uniform carrying a small toolbox. He was not a soldier, not an enemy, just a worker, a human among many humans here. She froze for a breath, unsure if she should run toward him or away. The worker looked up, confused by the alarms, confused by the sight of her blood and fear. His eyes widened. He had heard rumors of experiments, whispers of cages, but he never thought he would see one of them like this, with eyes full of terror, body trembling like any other living soul. Before either could move, the soldiers turned the corner. Their rifles pointed forward, ready to fire. The alien girl's body went cold. There was no escape now. She was trapped between guards and a stranger. Her lips trembled as she whispered a final word to herself, something in her own language, something like a goodbye. But then, something happened that neither she nor the soldiers expected. The human worker stepped forward. He moved slow, but steady, placing himself between the soldiers and the alien girl. His body was not strong, his hands were not armed. Yet his stance said one thing clearly: "You will not pass." The soldiers barked at him. "Step aside, worker. That thing is property of the station." The worker did not move. He looked at the alien girl, saw her bleeding arm, her shaking shoulders, her desperate eyes. Something in him lit like a fire. Something human. Something that refused to stay silent. "No," he said softly but firmly. The soldiers laughed. "No? Do you want to die, fool?" The worker's heart pounded. His legs felt heavy, his throat dry. But he stayed in front of her. He knew the punishment for standing in the way. He knew one order could end his life. Yet he also knew something else. If he stepped aside, she would be dragged back to the cages. Tortured again, erased. The alien girl blinked at him, shocked. All her life among humans, she had only seen cruelty, orders, chains, strikes of pain. She had never seen one stand for her. Her lips parted, whispering almost without sound, "Why? Why help me?" The worker did not answer her. Not yet. His eyes stayed on the soldiers. One of them raised his rifle higher. Last warning. "Step aside." The human worker's voice shook, but his words did not. "She is not your property. She is not your thing, if you want her. You'll have to go through me." The corridor went silent for a breath. Even the alarm seemed far away. The alien girl's chest rose and fell in fast waves. She stared at his back, at the simple man who dared to shield her. Something inside her, something she thought long dead, flickered to life. Hope. The soldiers moved, slow and dangerous, forming a half circle. Their armor clinked, their rifles ready. The worker clenched his fists, knowing his toolbox was the only weight he carried. He could not win, not against weapons, but he could stand. He could resist, and sometimes resistance was enough to change everything. The alien girl pressed her hand harder against her wound, her vision blurring. She wanted to tell him to run, to save himself, but no words came. She could only watch. The leader of the guard sneered. "One human against all of us? Brave, but foolish." The worker swallowed his fear. His voice dropped low. "Maybe foolish, but tonight, no more chains. Not in front of me." The soldiers lifted their rifles. The alien girl closed her eyes, and in that frozen heartbeat, as red lights flashed and steel walls trembled, the story of a single human standing against cruelty began. The soldier's finger tightened on the trigger. The alien girl's chest froze with fear. The human worker's legs shook, but he did not step aside. The corridor was a battlefield waiting to explode. Red alarm lights still pulsed against the walls. The smell of smoke from far-off fires carried in the air. Every sound felt louder, boots shifting, rifles clicking, the alien girl's fast breathing. Last chance, the soldier barked. His voice was sharp like broken metal. Move or be buried with her. The worker's heart hammered. He was not a soldier, not a fighter, just a man who fixed wires and carried tools. But something inside him had changed the moment he saw her, bleeding, scared, hunted like an animal. He could not step aside, not now. His hand gripped the heavy wrench from his toolbox. His voice came out low but clear. "You will not touch her." The alien girl's wide eyes glistened. She had heard many words in her life, commands, insults, cruel laughter, but never words spoken to protect her. For a moment, silence hung like a sword above them all. Then the soldiers moved. The leader raised his hand. "Take him down. Hurt him enough to remember, but leave him alive. The girl is ours." 2 guards rushed forward. Their armor clanked, their rifles pointed down, ready to strike with brute force. The worker knew he had no chance against trained soldiers. But fear did not stop him. He swung the wrench with all his strength. The first guard blocked with his arm, but the impact rang against metal. The worker spun, ducking under a strike, and rammed his shoulder into the soldier's chest. The man stumbled back. The second guard grabbed the worker's arm and twisted, pain shooting through his bones. The alien girl gasped. Her legs wanted to run, but her heart screamed not to leave him. Her wound burned, but still she moved. She snatched a broken pipe from the floor, weak but desperate, and struck the soldier's back. The hit was small. The soldier barely felt it, but it gave the worker one chance. He pushed hard, driving his wrench into the man's helmet with a ringing clang. Sparks flew. The soldier collapsed with a grunt. The second soldier cursed, swinging his rifle like a club. The worker ducked, barely missing the strike. His breath came fast, his chest heavy. He had never fought like this before. But he had one thought, one fire inside him. Protect her. The alien girl pressed herself against the wall, watching with wide, glowing eyes. Every movement of the human felt like something impossible. Someone weak standing against the strong. Someone unarmed fighting the armed. More soldiers marched closer. Their boots thundered down the corridor. The leader raised his rifle now. Enough games. Kill him. The alien girl's heart stopped. She wanted to scream, to move, to do something, but her body was weak, her wound bleeding too much. The worker felt the danger in his bones. Death stood inches away, yet instead of fear he felt calm. He stepped back, standing in front of her again, his body the only barrier between the rifles and her. If I fall, he thought, let it be standing. The rifles lifted, fingers hovered near triggers. Time slowed, and then an explosion shook the station. The walls trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. Somewhere above, a blast ripped through metal and wires. Lights flickered, alarms screamed louder. The shockwave threw both soldiers and the worker to the ground. The alien girl covered her head, crying out. When she opened her eyes, smoke filled the corridor. The soldiers scrambled to their feet, shouting orders into their comms. The worker coughed, pulling himself up. His head spun, but his first thought was her. He looked back. She was alive, though shaking. Relief hit him like water to fire. The soldiers were distracted now, answering urgent calls. Something bigger than this chase was happening. Another attack? A rebellion? The worker did not know, but he knew this was his chance. He grabbed her arm gently. Come on, move. Her eyes widened. You still help me? Yes, always. Now run. Together they stumbled into the smoke. The worker guided her through half-broken doors, past pipes hissing steam. The girl's legs wobbled, but she followed him. Each step felt borrowed from fate. Behind them, the soldiers cursed and shouted, trying to see through the smoke. But the pair vanished into the chaos of the burning station. They stopped at last in a dark service tunnel. The worker leaned against the wall, his breath ragged. The alien girl sat beside him, clutching her wound. For a long moment, only silence filled the tunnel. Finally, she turned her head and whispered, Why? He blinked, tired, confused. Why what? Why risk all this for me? For someone not human? He looked at her. Her face glowed faintly in the dark, her eyes full of pain but also curiosity. He thought for a moment, then answered simply, Because you are alive. Because no one deserves chains. Because someone has to say no. Her lips parted, but no words came. In her whole life, no one had spoken to her like that. No one had seen her as more than a thing. She lowered her eyes, whispering something so soft it was almost lost in the dark. Maybe. You are different. The worker said nothing more. He just sat beside her, listening to the sound of soldiers hunting in the distance. His body was weak, his future uncertain, but his choice was clear. Tonight he had become a barrier, not for himself, for her. And the story of human defiance had only just begun. The tunnel was cold. Metal pipes hissed with escaping steam, and shadows stretched long across the walls. The human worker sat with his back against the steel, his chest rising and falling heavily. Beside him, the alien girl pressed her wounded arm, her eyes half closed. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the distant echo of soldiers' boots reminded them that danger was not far. At last, the girl whispered, her voice shaking. Why do you not leave me? They will hunt you too. The worker turned his head. Even in the dim light, her face looked pale and fragile. He saw fear in her, but also something else, something deeper buried under pain. He answered softly, I will not leave. You are not alone now. Her eyes widened, as if the words were strange, as if she had never heard them before. She looked away, staring at the ground. The memory pulled her far from the tunnel, far from the smoke of the station, back into the darkness of her past. She remembered her people's world. Once there had been light, forests with crystal leaves, rivers that glowed at night, voices that sang without fear. She remembered her mother's hands warm against her cheek. She remembered laughter. Then the ships came. Human soldiers, cold faces, armored hands, sharp orders. Her people were chained, beaten, divided like broken toys. Families torn apart, voices silenced. The forest burned until the night was darker than ever. She remembered being dragged into cages, experiments, needles, questions asked in languages she barely understood. She had cried for her mother, for anyone, but no one came. The humans called her species subjects, not children, not daughters, not alive. And in that prison her heart had hardened. She had promised herself never to trust, never to hope. Hope only brought more pain. Now sitting beside this human worker, she felt her chest ache. His words clung to her ears. You're not alone now. She shook her head. You do not know what I am. You do not know what they did. The worker tilted his head. Then tell me. I will listen. Her throat tightened. Her people's story was not something humans deserved to hear. But his eyes were not like the others. They were tired, yes, but not cruel. Not empty, she swallowed. Slowly the words spilled out. They took everything. My world, my people, my name. I am the last of my family. Maybe the last of my kind. To them I am nothing, just an object. Her voice cracked. She covered her face with her hand. Tears, bright glowing tears, slipped between her fingers and fell onto the steel floor. The worker felt a knot in his chest. He had seen many things in his life. Poverty, war, cruelty. But never tears like these. Tears that carried a whole world's pain. He wanted to speak, to comfort, but words felt too small. So he simply reached out slowly, carefully, and placed his hand on her shoulder. She flinched at first, unused to kindness, but then she did not pull away. You are not nothing, he said. His voice was firm now. You are alive. You matter, and as long as I breathe, they will not take that from you again. Her lips parted. She stared at him as if trying to read his soul. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. Belief could kill, and yet, for the first time in years, she felt something stirring inside her chest. A small, trembling flame. Hope. Their moment was broken by a noise. Voices. Boots. Soldiers searching the tunnels. The sound bounced off the walls closer with every second. The worker cursed under his breath. We cannot stay. He stood, offering his hand to her. Can you walk? She hesitated, then placed her glowing fingers in his palm. Yes, I will try. Together they moved, step by step, deeper into the maze of service passages. Each turn brought new danger. The air grew hotter, the pipes louder. Steam hissed like serpents. Behind them, the soldiers' voices grew louder. Search every corner. They cannot have gone far. The alien girl leaned against the wall, her wound burning. The worker supported her, his arm steady around her shoulder. He was tired, his muscles heavy, but he did not let go. At one point, she whispered, Why? Why do you care so much? You could escape alone. He looked down at her. His face was tired, streaked with dirt, but his eyes burned bright. Because I am human, and if being human means watching cruelty in silence, Then I do not want to be human anymore. Her breath caught. The words struck her like lightning. Never had she heard such defiance. Not from her own people, and certainly not from a human. They turned another corner only to freeze. Ahead of them, a beam of light cut through the smoke. Soldiers. The worker's grip tightened on his wrench. His pulse pounded. The alien girl felt her knees weaken, but she stood firm beside him. The soldiers raised their rifles, and in that instant she realized something. She was not just running anymore. Not just surviving. For the first time since her world had burned, she wanted to fight, because someone stood with her. Her chains were no longer only in her past. They were breaking link by link here in the present, the tunnel filled with shouts, steel, and fire. And so the battle of the hunted truly began. The tunnel split into two paths. The human worker paused, his ears sharp, listening for footsteps. The alien girl leaned weakly against him, her breath short and fast. Her wound still bled, leaving dark streaks on the metal floor. Then a sound echoed behind them. Boots. Many boots, they found us, the worker whispered. His jaw tightened. He pulled her forward, guiding her down the left path. But after only a few steps, his heart dropped. The corridor ended in a sealed storage bay. A dead end. The alien girl's eyes widened. No escape. He turned, gripping the wrench in his hand. His throat was dry, but his voice was steady. Then we fight. The girl looked at him as if he had spoken madness. She had been trained to run, to hide, to survive in silence. Fighting soldiers was suicide. Yet when she saw his stance, shaking but unbroken, something inside her whispered that maybe, for the first time, suicide was better than surrender. The boots grew louder. Shadows stretched on the walls as armored figures approached. The human worker stepped forward, placing himself fully in front of her. "Stay behind me," he said. She clenched her teeth. "No, I will fight too." He turned, surprised. Her glowing eyes burned with something new. Anger, not fear. For a moment he almost smiled. Then the soldiers arrived. 6 of them stormed into the bay, rifles raised. Their leader barked, "Drop the tool, worker."
"Step aside."
"The subject is ours." The worker raised his wrench like a sword. His chest rose and fell, but his feet stayed firm. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me," the leader sneered. "So be it," the soldiers charged. The worker swung first. His wrench slammed into a guard's helmet with a loud crack. Sparks flew and the soldier fell. Another rushed in, striking with the butt of his rifle. Pain exploded across the worker's ribs, but he refused to fall. He grabbed the rifle, twisted hard, and shoved the soldier into the wall. The alien girl clutched a broken pipe. Her arms shook, but when a soldier reached for her, she swung with all her strength. The strike hit his shoulder. It was weak, but enough to distract. The worker followed with a heavy blow from his wrench, dropping the guard. "Stay close," the worker shouted. She nodded, breathing fast, her glowing tears mixing with sweat. Another soldier kicked him in the chest. He hit the ground hard, his breath knocked out. The alien girl screamed and swung her pipe wildly, hitting nothing. A soldier raised his rifle to strike her down. The worker forced himself up, pain burning in his lungs. He threw the wrench with all his might. It slammed into the soldier's back, knocking him off balance. The girl ducked, barely escaping the strike. Chaos filled the bay. Metal clashed, boots slammed, voices shouted. The worker fought like a man possessed. Not skilled, not trained, but driven by something stronger. Refusal. Every strike he made was fueled by the thought, "She will not go back to chains." The alien girl fought too. Weak, bleeding, but every move she made was a scream of defiance against her past. Still, they were outnumbered. The leader stepped forward at last. Unlike the others, he moved with calm confidence. His armor was thicker, his weapon larger. He pointed his rifle straight at the worker's chest. "It ends now." The worker froze, his breath heavy. His body ached, his arms trembled. He could not win this. He knew it. The alien girl's heart pounded. Her vision blurred from blood loss. She could barely stand. Yet, as she looked at him, this human who had bled for her, something inside her screamed louder than her pain. She stumbled forward, placing herself between the rifle and him. The leader laughed. "Pathetic. You think to shield him?" Her voice cracked, but it carried strength. "You will not take him. Not while I live." The worker's eyes widened. His chest ached, not from pain, but from the sight of her broken and bleeding, yet still standing for him. The leader's finger moved toward the trigger, and then the station shook. Another explosion ripped through the walls above. Dust rained down. Lights flickered, sirens screamed. The ground trembled, throwing soldiers off balance. The worker seized the chance. He grabbed the alien girl and pulled her to the side as the leader fired. The shot missed, tearing into the wall. The bay filled with smoke and falling debris. In the chaos, the worker snatched up his wrench again, striking the nearest soldier. The alien girl pushed herself against another, using the last of her strength to shove him into the falling rubble. "Run!" the worker shouted. Together, limping, coughing, they slipped through a half-broken maintenance door as the bay collapsed behind them. They stumbled into another dark passage, both bruised and bleeding. The worker leaned against the wall, gasping for air. The alien girl fell to her knees, her whole body shaking. For a long moment they said nothing. Only the echo of falling rubble filled the silence. At last the girl looked up, her glowing tears tracing lines on her cheeks. "Why do you fight so hard, Ars, for me?" The worker, his chest rising and falling, looked back at her. His voice was rough but steady. "Because some battles are worth dying for." She stared at him, her heart heavy and strange. For the first time in her life, she did not feel like property. She felt like a person, but the fight was not over. Somewhere behind them, soldiers were regrouping. Somewhere ahead, danger waited. But now in her chest burned a fire that chains could not kill. The first fight had ended. The war for freedom had only begun. The passage shook with every blast. Smoke leaked through the cracks in the walls. The air burned with heat, carrying the bitter smell of fire and melted steel. The human worker stumbled, his hand pressed to his ribs. Each breath cut like knives. His shirt was torn and stained with blood. The alien girl, weak and trembling, held his arm to keep him standing. Her own wound burned, but her eyes stayed locked on him. "You are hurt," she whispered. He forced a thin smile, though pain twisted across his face. "So are you." Her lips trembled. She wanted to say more, to beg him not to move, but the sounds of soldiers echoed again behind them. There was no time. "Come," she urged, pulling him forward. Her steps were slow but determined. For the first time, she was the one guiding him. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, a forgotten engine room. Broken machines sat like corpses of steel covered in ash. Flames licked the far wall, casting orange light across the ruins. The worker collapsed against a rusted console, his chest rising and falling in sharp gasps. Sweat dripped down his brow. His hands shook as he tried to stay awake. The alien girl knelt beside him, panic in her glowing eyes. She pressed her hands against his wound. "Stay alive," she whispered. "Please." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "I'm not leaving yet. Not while you need me." Her heart tightened. In her memory, humans had always been jailers, hunters, destroyers. But here before her lay one who chose pain instead of surrender, who chose her instead of safety. She pressed harder on his wound, her tears falling onto his skin. They glowed faintly, leaving shimmering marks. The worker blinked at the sight. "Your tears? They glow." She looked away, ashamed. "They say my people's tears carry memory. When we weep, we remember all who came before us." Her voice broke. "I have wept too many times." The worker reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her wrist. "Then let these tears be for life, not only for loss." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but hope was dangerous. Yet as she looked at his face, pale, tired, but still defiant, she felt that dangerous thing spark again inside her. Suddenly, the door to the chamber burst open. Soldiers stormed in, rifles glowing red under the firelight. Their leader's voice roared, "There they are." The alien girl's heart stopped. She looked at the worker. He could barely stand. Fighting now was impossible, but she would not let them take him. Not after all he had given. She rose slowly, her body weak but her spirit blazing. She stood in front of him just as he had once stood in front of her. Her voice shook, but it carried. "You will not touch him." The soldiers laughed. One raised his rifle. The worker groaned, forcing himself to rise. "No, don't." But his legs gave way and he fell back against the console. The alien girl's eyes glowed brighter in the firelight. For a moment, the soldiers hesitated. There was something in her stance, in her trembling frame, that was no longer only prey. "Stay back," she warned, though her voice cracked. The leader sneered. "You are broken, weak. You cannot fight." But before he could order the attack, the ground shook again. A massive explosion ripped through the floor above. The ceiling cracked and fire rained down. Pipes burst, spewing steam and sparks. The chamber turned into chaos. The alien girl grabbed the worker, pulling him toward the far side of the room. Flames leapt across the machines. Smoke blinded the soldiers as they shouted orders. The worker groaned, barely conscious. "Leave me. Run." She shook her head fiercely, tears streaming. "No, you stayed for me. Now I stay for you." Her small body strained under his weight, but she dragged him step by step. The fire burned hotter, the smoke thicker. Every breath seared her lungs. A soldier through the smoke shouted, "Stop them!" Shots rang out, red bolts striking the walls around them. The alien girl pushed forward, her strength born not of body but of will. At last she saw it, a broken vent at the far wall. A way out. With all her strength, she pulled him into the vent, crawling on hands and knees, dragging his body behind her. The heat licked at her back, but she did not stop. They collapsed at last in a narrow shaft far from the flames. Both coughed, choking on smoke. The worker's eyes fluttered, half closed. "You saved me," he whispered. She leaned close, her voice fierce and trembling. "I will not let you die. Not you." For a long moment, silence fell between them, broken only by their ragged breaths. In that silence, the bond between them grew. No longer stranger and prisoner, no longer worker and alien. Now they were something else, together. But the silence did not last. From the distance came the faint hum of engines. The girl's sharp ears caught the sound first. She froze, her blood running cold. She recognized it. The sound of transport carriers, the ships that took her people away, never to return. Her eyes narrowed. She knew now this was not only about her. The soldiers were not just hunting her to punish her escape. They were preparing something bigger, something terrible. She looked down at the human worker. His eyes were closed, his breath weak. She touched his hand gently. "Rest," she whispered. "I will watch. I will protect you." She turned her gaze to the dark ahead, her body still trembling but her spirit hardening. The fire behind them burned bright, but the fire inside her burned brighter. For the first time, she was not only surviving, she was beginning to fight back. The night of blood and fire was not the end. It was the beginning of rebellion. The night on the station burned. Smoke drifted through every corridor. Fires raged in chambers once filled with machines. Sirens screamed endlessly, like the cries of the damned. The human worker lay against the cold wall of the maintenance shaft, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His face was pale, his lips cracked, his body weak from blood loss. The alien girl sat close beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the dark ahead. Her hand rested on his arm, making sure he was still alive. She had spent her whole life waiting for someone to save her. But now she realized she had to save him and maybe save more. She heard the sound first, soft voices, weak footsteps. Her sharp ears twitched. She turned and saw shapes moving through the smoke. Not soldiers. Not hunters. These were others, thin, tired, scarred. Workers, prisoners, slaves. Humans and aliens both. One of them, a young man with oil-stained hands, froze when he saw her glowing eyes. "Is that a one of them?" he whispered in fear. Another, an older woman, shook her head. "Look at her. She's bleeding. She's no enemy." The alien girl rose slowly. She was small, trembling, but her voice carried weight. "They will hunt us all. If we run alone, we die alone. If we stand together, maybe we live." The crowd shifted uneasily. Fear hung heavy, like chains that had never been broken. From behind her, the human worker coughed. His voice was weak but clear. "She's right. I stood once alone. It wasn't enough. But if we all stand..." His words faded, but his eyes blazed. "Then no wall, no soldier, can hold us." The prisoners looked at one another. Hope was dangerous, but the fire in his words lit something in them, a spark. The alien girl stepped closer to the crowd. Her glowing eyes met theirs one by one. "I was a prisoner. I was nothing to them. But this human stood for me.
He bled for me.
If one can dare, then many can dare. We do not need chains. Not tonight." Silence followed her words. The prisoners shifted again, but this time their eyes were not only afraid. Some were angry. Some were ready. The older woman clenched her fists. "Then we fight." Others nodded, murmuring agreement. Weak though they were, tired though they were, something inside them had awakened. The alien girl turned back to the human worker. His body was broken, but his lips curved in a faint smile. "You see?" he whispered. Not just us anymore. Her heart swelled, heavy with both fear and pride. For the first time, she was not running alone. They moved together through the tunnels, a growing wave of the desperate and the brave. The alien girl led them, guiding with her sharp senses. The worker, though weak, walked with them, supported by two others. His wrench still hung at his side. Every corner was dangerous. Soldiers roamed in groups, their armor shining under the flickering lights. But now, when they attacked, they did not face one. They faced many. The first clash came near a supply bay. Soldiers stormed in, rifles raised. But the prisoners struck first. Pipes, tools, bare fists. They fought with the weapons of slaves, but the fury of the free. The alien girl swung her broken pipe, knocking a soldier's helmet aside. Another prisoner leapt onto a guard's back, dragging him down. The human worker, though weak, drove his wrench into an enemy's leg, sending him crashing to the floor. It was messy, brutal, desperate, but it was victory. For the first time, the soldiers fell back. Cheers erupted, rough and broken, but real. The alien girl stood in the firelight, her chest rising and falling, her glowing tears streaking her cheeks. She looked at the others and raised her voice. Do you see? They bleed like us. They fall like us. They are not gods. They are not masters. Together we can break them. The crowd roared. Chains were no longer silent. Word of the fight spread through the station. More prisoners joined. Some humans, some alien, all tired of being tools. They carried hammers, knives, even broken glass. What they carried mattered less than the fire inside them. The human worker leaned against the wall, barely able to stand. Yet his eyes followed them with pride. He whispered to the alien girl as she passed, "They're listening to you now." "You're leading them." She shook her head. "No, you lead." "I only carry your fire," he smiled faintly. "Then carry it well." But the war was not won. The commander of the soldiers heard of the uprising. His voice thundered through the intercom. "Rebels in my station? Crush them. Show no mercy." Heavy doors slammed shut. Troops gathered. The station itself turned into a trap. The alien girl's heart pounded. She looked at the others, wounded, weak, but burning with hope. She looked at the human worker, dying but unbroken, and she knew. The next fight would decide everything. She gripped her pipe tighter, standing tall despite her trembling legs. "We do not run," she said. "Not anymore. Tonight we stand together." The prisoners raised their fists, their tools, their broken weapons. A roar shook the tunnel, and in that roar the chains of the past began to break. The final battle was coming. The station trembled like a dying beast. Fires burned across the decks. Smoke curled through every vent. Sirens wailed, warning of collapse. In the center of it all, a crowd of prisoners stood armed with nothing but broken pipes, tools, and rage. Their faces were tired, their bodies bruised, but their eyes burned with new fire. The alien girl stood at the front. Her glowing eyes cut through the smoke. Her hands shook, yet she gripped her pipe as if it were a blade of destiny. Beside her, leaning heavily on his wrench, stood the human worker. His shirt was soaked with blood, his breath ragged. But he refused to fall. His voice, hoarse but steady, carried to all. "They think we are weak. They think we are nothing. Tonight we show them what happens when even the weakest dare to stand." A roar answered him. Chains rattled no more. The commander of the soldiers entered the chamber. His armor was thick, shining silver under the firelight. His face was cruel, eyes sharp with confidence. Around him marched lines of soldiers, rifles ready. He sneered. "One human dares to defy an empire? One alien girl thinks herself free? Foolish. You are nothing but sparks in the dark, and I will crush you." The alien girl stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "We are more than sparks. Together we are fire." The prisoners roared again, their courage echoing through the steel halls. The commander laughed, raising his blade. "Then burn." And the final fight began. The clash shook the chamber. Soldiers charged with rifles blazing. Prisoners answered with fury. Tools smashed against armor. Sparks flew. Screams and shouts filled the air. The human worker swung his wrench with desperate strength, knocking rifles aside. He ducked under blows, each move fueled by will alone. His body screamed in pain, but his heart roared louder. Not while she stands. Not while they stand. The alien girl fought at his side. Every strike of her pipe carried her people's sorrow, her people's hope. She moved with grace, even in weakness. When soldiers struck, she rose again. When fear whispered, she silenced it. Around them, the prisoners fought like storm and flame. Some fell, but more pressed forward. For the first time, soldiers stepped back, shaken by the power of unity. But the commander did not falter. His blade cut through the crowd like lightning. Prisoners fell before him. His armor turned blows aside. He was a storm of steel, a wall of death. At last he reached the center where the human worker and the alien girl stood. The commander raised his blade at the worker. "You little man. You began this. Die, and it ends." The worker's knees buckled. His body had no strength left. Yet he stepped forward, standing tall. "Maybe I die, but it does not end. Not now, not ever, because tonight you face not one." The alien girl stepped beside him, her glowing eyes blazing. Her voice rang clear. "Not one, two." The crowd behind them shouted as one. "Not one, all!" The commander roared in anger and charged. His blade slashed down. The worker raised his wrench, blocking. Though the impact shook his arms to the bone, the alien girl struck with her pipe, sparks flying against armor. Together they pressed forward, pushing him back step by step. The commander snarled, striking again and again. But for the first time his blade met not silence but resistance. Two figures, weak, bleeding, but unbroken, stood against him. And behind them 100 voices cried out for freedom. The battle turned, a soldier fell, then another. The crowd surged like a wave, fueled by courage. Rifles were torn from hands, armor cracked under fury. The commander swung wide, but the worker ducked low, ramming his wrench into the gaps of the armor. Sparks burst. The alien girl struck high, her pipe smashing the commander's mask. His face was revealed, angry, desperate, afraid. "No," he shouted. "You are nothing." The human worker glared at him, blood on his lips. "We are everything you fear." With one final cry, the alien girl drove her pipe into his chest. The commander stumbled, fell to his knees, and crashed to the ground. Silence followed. For a heartbeat, the chamber froze. Then a roar erupted. The prisoners had won. The alien girl dropped her pipe, her body shaking. She turned to the worker, who fell to one knee. His strength finally gone. She caught him before he hit the ground. "You live," she whispered fiercely. "You must live." His eyes closed halfway, but his lips curved in a faint smile. "We dared." That was enough. Tears glowed on her cheeks, falling onto his chest. She held him close as the crowd gathered. Their chains broken, their voices free. For the first time, the station echoed not with commands, but with hope. Later, as the fires died and the soldiers fled, the prisoners gathered in the central hall. The alien girl stood tall, though weak, her hand holding the workers tightly. She raised her voice so all could hear. "We were nothing. But tonight one human dared to say no, and because of that we are free." The hall shook with cheers. The worker opened his eyes, meeting hers. "No," he whispered softly. "We are free, because we all dared." Her heart swelled. She looked at him, at the crowd, at the broken chains lying on the ground. And for the first time in her life, she believed the past was not her end. It was only the beginning of freedom, the beginning of fire, the beginning of when humanity dared.